and welcome to High-Fliers with me, Russell Walker, on the Glasgow Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel. Now, one of the biggest casualties of the pandemic was going to be business networking groups. I mean, how on earth could they survive when the very essence of what they are, face-to-face meetings, was taken away by COVID restrictions? Well, some might have perished, but others embraced the challenge and are now thriving online communities. One of these is Scottish Women in Business, and I'm delighted to welcome onto High-Fliers outgoing SWIB President Debbie Shields and her successor, Tracy Scott. So, how have you survived COVID?
I think we've survived it really well, to be honest. I think, like everyone else, when COVID started and we had the whole, you can't meet each other in person, and it was a complete like, what the hell are we going to do here? That's our business model, more or less, is to connect people and meet with people in person at events. That's kind of, the very basis of what we do. That's the start of it. So I think what we did in terms of the committee was really think about how we can change that. And I think, like a lot of people, the first kind of thought was, let's do everything online and try and do it the same. Try and keep the essence of what we're doing, but take that online. But then I think we quickly realised that there was so much stuff happening. It was so noisy. There was so much noise online for people. And the committee we all are all volunteers, so we've got jobs and families and all that other stuff as well. So I actually had said, let's just stop here. Let's stop and look at what we're doing. Are the events that we're bringing out actually helping anyone? Are they adding value to people? Are they still connecting people? Is it still what we want to do? So we kind of took, we had a kind of summer social, which was like a social event with wine and stuff like that, and a bit of kind of time to relax. And then from that, we kind of took a bit of time to think what we were doing. And then, obviously all the way throughout kind of asking members what they wanted and stuff. And from that, developed a bit more of a kind of solid plan, because COVID wasn't going anywhere. It was kind of, well, maybe by July it will be okay, or maybe by September it will be okay. And we kind of thought to ourselves, well, we need to make a plan here to think that it's not going to be okay, to make sure we're connecting people. Because I think one thing that did come out of all the digital stuff we've done is that we were able to have people come to our events from much further afield. So like Shetland, for instance, who wouldn't, that member wouldn't be able to come to our Tuesday night events. It just wouldn't happen. So stuff like that was really good. So I'm actually very proud and thankful for all the work that everyone in the committee put in over that time.
Tracy, that must have been, I guess, quite daunting for you as the incoming president, to be coming in at a time when everything was literally up in the air.
Back, like Debbie says at the beginning, it was a little bit like, what do we do? What is it that our members want from us? And I think it took us a few months, to actually find our feet and get back into a flow of regular types of events. So definitely, the handover normally would happen in September. And I think running up to that, we were probably just getting to a point where we were like, okay, we're not getting back to normal as quick as what we thought we were going to. This is going to continue, and now we need to start thinking about making it more permanent. So definitely that was a bit, of probably a daunting thought, but also it just felt like we were just hitting a flow, and it didn't make sense to just all of a sudden change just because we always did that in September. So, I think we both felt that it was just absolutely the right thing to do, to extend Debbie's time, and we would just share like that next year. So we both now have like an extra 6 months. But I feel that 6 months we've done probably so much in it. Obviously we had Christmas, we've had so many different lockdown changes and announcements in that time, but I feel like we've been quite constant in what we've been doing over that time, and I think we've sort of hit a flow, like we're getting there now. So even if we hadn't planned for this to be when we did the handover, I think we're in a good position for it now, and it feels right now. And I think that's the only time you should do it, is if it feels right for everybody, not just us.
It sounds very much like what the two of you are saying, is that actually this pandemic probably brought the best out in you, because you had to think more laterally, more out of the box, rather than just, the normal way that you would have done the handover.
Yes, I think there's a degree of truth in that. I think Tracy and I had always worked quite closely together anyway. From when I took over as president before, there was kind of a plan. Tracy would be the vice president, and then we would start to implement some changes in SWIB that Tracy would then see through when she was president. So we kind of had a few changes we wanted to make, and then I think COVID kind of forced us to make some other changes on top of that actually worked out for the better. Don't get me wrong, we didn't. Not everything was perfect. And some things, some events weren't very well attended, or maybe the timing was wrong for some of the topics or stuff like that, or we tried to do too much to help members too much and kind of overwhelm people. But I think there was always that kind of work to make sure that SWIB was coming up to be fit for purpose for today, for this kind of time, not for something that was put in place 10 or 15 or longer years ago. It was some changes we want to make, and becoming a bit more digital, I think, just really added to what we were wanting to do, and how we went about some stuff.
We're all volunteers, we're all doing this in our spare time, if you like, and it was really tough for a lot of the committee because some people work for themselves, so it was a challenge in that way. Some people work for other companies. We lost a couple of people because they just had to put 100% into their job, and we did lose a couple of people through that. So it was really challenging. And in hindsight, it would have been really easy for everybody just to shut down, but I don't think we ever even really considered that. Like Debbie said, let's take a break and regroup, but that's as far as it went. We never considered shutting down, which would have been a good idea, maybe, I don't know.
I think as well, we're a non-profit, and our financials took a massive hit, as you would expect, as most people's have, and we're not running Google or something. We know what we're doing and what we need to function, and it's not much, but when you do lose that kind of event income every month, and you start to notice it, let's put it that way. And there was a kind of point, I know we were thinking, how much longer will this be viable for if we can't start charging for events again? So we did have those kind of talks offline about how that looked, and that was a concern at one point. But I think it's real testament really to the committee and the drive of the committee. I think the committee is made up of people from all different types of, like Tracy said, there's one woman bands, and corporate people like me, people with their own businesses like Tracy, who all have a different kind of skill set and a different reason for being there. And with that comes a bunch of different ideas and different ways to go forward. And I think, that's where our real strength came. I think, let's take a break, let's regroup, let's see what's happening. When you are the kind of president, and it sounds president's the wrong word for this, we need to change the title, but when you're leading a group of people like that, it's really important that everyone kind of gets the sense of where we're going, and there's some direction, but that is kind of a really collaborative process. And I'm just the person that has to kind of try and keep everyone in order on the meetings and stuff, and kind of set the direction. But I think it was a real kind of, almost gave us a real energy, like a real kind of renewed energy to get things going again. And, we had some members who couldn't, wouldn't be able to pay the membership fees or couldn't pay for events and stuff. So we kind of thought, right, we can only keep going for free for so long. So we extended everyone's memberships by 3 months. And then we kind of came up with different ideas, and Tracy came up with a way of being able to have members who were able to pay monthly, which we didn't have before, and also a kind of digital only membership, which we'd never had before, which was less than a full membership. And makes much more sense seeing as all we're doing is digital. So we tried to kind of diversify what we were doing to make it easier for people, because we knew this was really important for people to have that kind of outreach and that kind of different conversation than sitting in their house worrying about their business all day.
Tracy, given that you'll be leading the group forward now, is there a suggestion that the Zoom meetings or the online meetings will actually be a part of that networking group now? It won't all be face-to-face meetings. You can see some advantages of doing this online.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's going anywhere. Like, just to step back a little bit, one of the things that Debbie mentioned, that there were things that we wanted to do when Debbie took over as president, and one of those things was to get out with Glasgow, you know, to get a better following in other places. And we went as far as running and kind of introduction event in Edinburgh, and it went down an absolute storm. It was really, really well attended. We got great feedback. Now we've got great followings out with Glasgow, you can see on social media. So we sort of started that, but then it had to stop. And now we've had COVID, and in a different way, we've been able to reach people further than we had ever imagined, you know, like, you know, in the Highlands and stuff. So the original plan will probably still happen, but just in a very different way. So the digital stuff is how we can do that. We can still, you know, get to the masses by having digital events, but obviously one day, hopefully not too far away, we'll get back to some face-to-face events. But I see it now as much more of a blended approach. It's not going to be one or the other. I see everything being combined. You know, you might go to one event online and that links into an event that you might go to face-to-face, and it's now how we decide to shape that and what that actually looks like, what people are after.
What has your legacy been, do you think, Debbie?
I guess when I started as president, there were a couple of things I wanted to do. One was to kind of grow our reach outside of Glasgow. The other was to modernise SWIB and to kind of have a lot of our practices internally and externally be fit for the modern time and you know, the way people work now and the way when people network and why do they network, and you know, you can go into all these questions and you know, I could talk about that kind of stuff all night. Why is it important? What do you want to do? But I would like to think that someone actually asked me that the other day, and I was like, well, I'm obviously the person that got SWIB through COVID. You know, no one else is ever going to have that. And I thought I'll be quite happy.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. You know, we're still here. We didn't dissolve, and we could have quite easily thought, right, you know, we're kind of not looking great financially. Let's just cut our losses, you know, and go. And we didn't. And that's probably, looking back on the year and a half, what I'm most proud of. Whereas if you'd asked me that a couple of months ago, I would have probably been more proud of, you know, changing this or doing something here. But I think the fact that we kept going, and some of it was really quite tough. And, you know, like I know there was some feedback from some members who, you know, are also going through, you know, family things and furlough and all that. You know, you'd get a message to say, or a text or a phone call to say, I'm so glad I came to your event last night. It was great just to, you know, see some different faces and do some different stuff. And at the very least, at the very, you know, bones of what SWIB is, that's what we're there for, is to, you know, give people or women a space where they've got that kind of support network and they're able to come and do that and talk freely and comfortably in a kind of safe environment with people that are kind of going through the same thing as they are or have an understanding of it. And the fact that we were still able to provide that service to members, I think, is probably the best thing of seeing SWIB through the last year and a half.
And Tracy, just finally on SWIB, you've talked about, you know, the things that you're hoping to do and implement. How optimistic are you about the future of the group?
I think I'm very optimistic. I think, I mean, something like COVID, don't really want to keep saying that word. You want to stop talking about it, but you can't. Something like that, so challenging, I think you need to take the positives out of it. And I think that's what we will be doing. So if we take the good bits out of what we have had to change and then add that onto what people want, and I'm excited to create our new normal. You know, what is SWIB? You know, I think the description of SWIB in hopefully a year and a half from now is going to be very different to what it was a year ago. But it will still have the same goal at heart. You know, everything that Debbie was just saying there, to be there for our members, supporting women and the same type of women, doing the same type of things, but we'll be supporting them in a different way. And I'm very optimistic. I think everybody going through what we've gone through has adapted and will come up with different ways to do things. And I'm really excited to bring all of that together and create what the new SWIB is going to be.
I'm assuming that either at the face-to-face meetings or your online digital meetings, some of the topics of conversation will center around, challenges that women are facing in business. And I think, when you read about that, there's a lot of kind of negativity about that sort of thing. So maybe for now, instead of asking you what are the challenges that women are going to face in business going forward, maybe we should turn that around and say, what are the opportunities that are there for women? So Debbie, what do you see the opportunities as being going forward, coming out of this COVID era?
I think the one thing COVID has done is given everyone a kind of centre point. So everyone's gone through the same thing. So, there's different ways of looking at it, and it's affected different groups of people in very different ways. But I think what's really important is that we talk about opportunities for women from all standpoints. So, it's not about necessarily talking about that as a woman or talking about it as a person from an ethnic minority or anything, but it's about having lots of different conversations, lots of different voices at the conversation, and making it a topic of conversation and not something that is kind of maybe spoken about a little bit over here, but no one wants to mention it at a board table, or, you can do this. So I think other than talking about, this opportunity might come out of this for women, it's about really just having that conversation and making it more okay to talk about the fact that, there has been an issue with women in different types of work and stuff like that. And my role, my day job, is an executive search. So I'm constantly working in that C-suite, senior level place where women, as we all know, are underrepresented. On boards in particular, a lot of my work revolves around boards as well. And that kind of question comes up. So opportunities are there, but for me, what's missing is the conversation about how we get to those opportunities, and how we make it fairer, because that's what it needs to be. It needs to be, from my point of view, a fair conversation where all opportunities and all opportunities are aired, but all voices are heard. And I mean that from every section of society, not just in protected characteristic terms, but people from, all different backgrounds. So there's that real diversity of thought in there, that real kind of diversity of opportunity, and to make sure those opportunities are there for everyone and spoken about more.
Tracy?
Just thinking practically about the last year or so, I think that people have naturally come across opportunities. I think people have been forced into it. They've been forced into talking to different types of people online because they don't have anybody else to talk to. There's lots of different groups out there that, like business accelerators, there's grants, there's lots of things. But I think, Debbie's right, people need to have the conversations and know where to go. So, yeah, I think definitely groups where you can talk to people and find out what opportunities are there that's key in it. I think we've probably seen a lot of people who, not naturally but not on purpose, have taken an opportunity. Maybe they've been at home and they've not got a job anymore, so they've had to diversify, do something a bit different. And even like I was saying earlier, the people that have now very, hats off to them, become teachers at home, I bet there's a lot of people out there that probably have gained a lot of confidence out of doing stuff like that. So then they would be more inclined to go and look for opportunities. And there is a lot out there. There's a lot of help for people to either get into business for themselves or, find the confidence to go and get that other job that you want. And I hope that a lot of people would have gained that confidence over the last little while.
I'm getting this.
So, I think being able to work from home more and employers seeing that flexible working is actually a really good option. Because we all know, the majority, I don't know the stats, but the majority of the time, the woman is the person that gives up part of her career, even if it's for a short time, or to look after kids, 9 out of 10 times or whatever. That's my stats, no one else's. So the most of the time, that's what happens. And the kind of level of roles I work in at Aspen, sometimes women are kind of almost barred from those opportunities because it's a full-time job. So I think for me, one of the biggest opportunities in terms of being able to access these things are employers changing their mindset about how home working works, and that it does work. and that it can work and it can be a bit more flexible. So I think that will have an effect on women taking up more senior positions as well a bit further down the line.
I did read a thing recently, Tracy, from I think it was a Harvard University study that suggested it would take 202 years to close the gender pay gap, which just seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Somebody has to do something.
Yeah, I was looking at some stats as well earlier, just to get an idea of what has the growth been for like women in leadership positions, for example. And Debbie, this stat will probably this better than anybody, but it was saying that in the last 5 years, women on boards has increased by 50%, but it's still only at 30 something, so that's still quite low. And then the other stat that the one that I was actually looking for was what's the growth been for women in leadership positions, and it was saying it's now at 30%. It was at 28 last year, and it was making a big song and dance about the fact that that's been the biggest growth in 4 years. And I'm thinking, we've got to 30%. That's terrible. That is so low. And 2%, well, it was actually 1.5% in the last year, and we are having parties because of it. And I think there's definitely more needs to be done, and I really hope that the positives that I was talking about come out of COVID, where there's more people setting up their own businesses and going after jobs that they really want because they've realised at home, this job is not happy, my employer's not treated me well through this. So I really hope that makes a shift and people do something, but it's going to be a long, slow process, and my optimism, probably I'll be saying the same thing in 2 years.
Well, let's hope not, Tracy, because one thing that occurs to me is that education is fairly key here, and that involves getting girls, I guess, at school to understand that on the one hand they don't have to be like boys, and then when they grow up to be like men, to be leaders, and also that they have to learn how to speak up for themselves.
That might be our saving grace, because actually the young people that I speak to these days, they blow my mind at how confident they are, how independent they are, the ideas they've got. You just hope that doesn't get shot down at some point and stop them from just going after what they want. But young people these days blow me away when I hear the way they talk, and I think about me at that age, and I think, I thought I was mature, but geez, they're doing all right.
I think there's something in how girls are treated when they're younger. So, I remember I was a bit what people would say kind of tomboyish for a phase, and there was like, oh, she's cool, she's a tomboy. Mm-hmm. So it was like, the more of a male characteristic that you seem to take on, the cooler you were, or the more kind of accepted you were, and that was kind of late primary school, I guess. If you think back, if I can think back that far, and those kind of things are things that completely, it's like, well, if you're a tomboy, you're cool. If you're a girly girl, then I'm not a tomboy, I'm just a girl, I'm just me. And that's, I think, the way I've always kind of looked at it as, I'm just me. I'm a woman, but I'm me. It's not about me going in to try and be more like my male colleagues or anything like that in the past. It's about being kind of accepted or respected for who you are, whether you're male, female, or however you identify.
But Debbie, the thing that really has always confused me, because I just don't understand it, is, and you talked about it earlier in a different context about hearing voices. For me, a business is successful through the people who are in the business, and that is easily because there's a diverse number of voices. And if you're talking about diversity, you're talking about everybody. You're talking about men, women, you're talking about ethnic minorities, you're talking about different sexual orientations. You need those voices to be heard in your one structure so that you can move on, you can make decisions. And that for me is really quite disappointing to be sitting in 2021 still having that conversation, still trying to persuade people that is an aspiration that a business should have.
Yeah, but I think it's, if we even put the protected characteristics to the side for a second, it's about having people from different backgrounds. So when I work with boards, the first thing I kind of look at is is everyone kind of middle class? Is everyone kind of professional? Is everyone like this? Because that's like almost having the one voice with 12 people in it. So kind of what I think you need to have are people from different backgrounds, and then that brings a different tone to everyone's, everyone's experience and backstory brings something else to the conversation. And I've never ever seen that be detrimental to any kind of strategic chat at a board, or in any kind of recruitment process, or in any conversation I've had business-wise. It's always, to me, people say, oh, when you're hiring someone for your team, you want to hire someone, who's not like you. So you get a different kind of perspective on it. So I think even at that kind of basic level, there needs to be something through the recruitment process, or the recruitment process for the board, where you're kind of not trying to copy and mimic what's there already, but trying to think, how does it change how we look and how we feel? How does the conversation at a boardroom change if we bring in a young trustee? And that kind of stuff. So that for me is really important. And I probably say the phrase diversity of thought about 10 times a day talking to people. And kind of through that work that I do with Aspen, there is definitely lots of learnings. And it was like I said before, the committee, we're all from different backgrounds and have different drivers and stuff like that. And that works really well. But if you had 8 or 9 people around that committee table who all were middle class, all white, all owned their own business, all in the same age bracket, it'd just be like the one person talking. So you want to make sure that we can get as much diversity in there as possible.
Tracy, would you echo that?
Absolutely. I think there's the only way that a business is going to, business, even the committee, like us, I think of us like a business, the only way that any business is going to make change or progress is if they've got a diverse bunch of people in there, people with different beliefs, different levels of experience, like Debbie says, different age, different background, everything, because that's the only way that people challenge each other's thinking and pushes the business forward, or makes you think of something that you wouldn't have thought of, because it would just be like having the one voice. And I think that I think any business needs to have different types of people, whatever that difference is. You need to have different types of people to be able to grow and come up with new ideas, do things a different way. I feel a Henry Ford quote coming on. If you keep doing what you did before, you're always going to get what you got before. Like, I'm sure that's not exactly what it is, but that I believe that, and that's true. Like, you need to change, and the only way to effectively make change is to have different people with different thoughts, different ways of doing things.
Madam President, thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you, Tracy, taking up the reins, and thanks to Debbie for having seen it through over this really, really terrible time that we've been going through with COVID. But we are, I think, coming out of it in some ways stronger than we went into it, and certainly have different ways of looking at how we do business. So best of luck to the group, and thank you very much for coming on High-Fliers, which can be seen on Glasgow Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you. Thanks, Russell.